What would you do if your teacher laughed when you said your dad works for NASA? What if the whole class joined in and no one believed you? This is the story of an 8-year-old boy, one quiet classroom, and the moment truth walked in wearing a NASA badge. You'll want to hear what happens next. If this story moves you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Career Week at Greenwood Elementary always brought a certain buzz. The desks were pushed to the sides of the room, replaced with a story circle of bright carpet squares. Students wiggled in their seats, sneakers tapping the tile in bursts of nervous energy, all eyes shifting to the classroom door every time the handle turned. Today was special. Micah Sanders, age 8 and barely tall enough for his feet to touch the ground when sitting on a chair, was bouncing with excitement. He had counted down the days. His dad was scheduled for the afternoon slot, and Micah had already rehearsed what he'd say when it was his turn. He wore his favorite Galaxy t-shirt under his hoodie, the one with stars scattered across the sleeves and a cartoon satellite beaming a signal toward Earth, just in case anyone asked. Mr. Rickerman, the third-grade teacher, clapped his hands to quiet the chatter. "All right, let's go around the circle," he said, clipboard in hand. "Share what your parents do. Don't worry if they couldn't make it today, just tell us." One by one, the students spoke. "My mom's a nurse. My dad fixes car engines. My aunt works at a bakery." Then it was Micah's turn. He straightened his back, cleared his throat, and delivered it exactly as he'd practiced. "My dad works at NASA," he said. "He's a communications systems engineer." Silence. Then a snicker. A boy across the circle twisted his mouth and said, "What? He build rockets in your backyard." Laughter flickered around the room, but it was Mr. Rickerman's reaction that made the world tilt. He chuckled, not loudly but enough. "That's ambitious, Micah," he said, eyebrows raised. "Maybe we aim for something a little more realistic next time, Micah blinked. The smile drained from his face like someone had pulled the plug. His hands, which had been animated just seconds before, folded in his lap. He looked down at the carpet, picking at a loose thread on his square. Talia Monroe, sitting beside him, leaned in and whispered, "I believe you." Micah didn't respond. For the rest of the day, he didn't say a word. Micah Sanders was smaller than most of the boys in his class, not just in height, in volume. He didn't shout to be heard. He didn't push to the front of the lunch line. But when he talked about space, his whole face lit up like a switch had been flipped behind his eyes. He wore his favorite rocket t-shirt under his hoodie that morning, the navy blue one with tiny planets stitched across the chest and a cartoon rocket zooming toward the stars. He depicted out the night before, laid it flat on his bed like it mattered. Because today it did. It was Career Week, and his dad, his actual NASA working, spacecraft talking, system designing dad, was scheduled to come in that afternoon. Micah had practiced what he was going to say in the mirror that morning, using a toothbrush as a microphone. He even drew a picture the night before, his dad floating between two planets, holding a satellite in one hand and a wrench in the other. He folded it carefully, tucked it into the front pocket of his backpack. It wasn't for show and tell. It was just in case someone didn't believe him. He thought he was ready. But after the laugh, after Mr. Rickerman's raised eyebrow and that too light chuckle, something cracked. At lunch, Micah didn't touch his sandwich. The apple slices stayed sealed in plastic. He didn't join the other boys when they raced for the swings, didn't even glance toward the monkey bars. Instead, he sat at the edge of the table slowly, silently tearing the drawing into 4 neat pieces. Then 8. Then 16. He pushed them deep into his backpack, underneath his folders, underneath everything. And that's where they stayed, next to the speech he'd practiced, next to the part of him that had been so excited to tell the truth. 3 nights before Career Week, the garage smelled like old cardboard and copper dust. The single hanging bulb cast a warm circle of light over the workbench, where Dr. Ellis Sanders crouched over a tangled cluster of wires, hands steady, brow furrowed in focus. Micah sat nearby on an overturned milk crate, legs swinging, sipping from a Capri Sun. In front of him, open on the floor, was a NASA folder filled with project notes and printed diagrams, none of which he fully understood, but all of which he treated like sacred treasure. "Dad," he asked suddenly, "how do the space robots talk to Earth?" Ellis looked up, one eyebrow raised. "You mean like the rovers?" Micah nodded. Ellis returned to untangling a wire. "Well," he said, "they don't really talk, they send signals. But they're really far away, like Mars far, so the messages have to bounce through relay satellites before they reach us. Think of it like trying to make a phone call from another planet." Micah tilted his head. "So it's like FaceTime but laggy," Ellis chuckled. "Exactly, space has the worst Wi-Fi in the universe." Micah grinned. "I'm gonna use that at school." He flipped through the folder, eyes scanning for something to bring. "Can I show them this?" Ellis stood, wiping his hands with a cloth, and glanced at the documents. "That one's got some classified info, probably not a great idea." "Just one page." Ellis crouched next to him, his voice gentle. "Buddy, you don't need papers, you've got the truth, that's enough." Micah hesitated. "But what if they laugh?" Ellis didn't answer right away. He looked his son in the eye. "Then let them," he said quietly. "Truth doesn't need applause, it just needs to be said." Micah looked down at the folder, then back up at his father, and nodded. Because in that moment, the truth felt like something solid, something real, and for a boy who admired the stars, there was no bigger dream than being able to speak it. By 1:45 p.m., the classroom had transformed into a stage. Parents trickled in, one by one, carrying props, posters, and the kind of forced cheer that came with public speaking. Mr. Rickerman stood near the door with a clipboard and a polished smile, calling names like a host on a daytime talk show. Micah sat in the second row, legs bouncing, hands fidgeting in his lap. He kept glancing at the clock, then the door, then back at his shoes. Every creak in the hallway made his chest tighten. What if Dad got stuck at work? What if he forgot? What if Mr. Rickerman was right? K.H. Lowe's mom brought cupcakes. Thomas's uncle passed around a tire gauge like it was treasure. The class clapped, asked questions, laughed easily. Micah didn't move. He just kept staring at the door, heart thudding in his chest. And then it opened. Not slowly, not dramatically, just enough. And in stepped Dr. Ellis Sanders, tall, composed, dressed in a navy blue blazer and slacks. His white shirt was crisp, his badge clipped neatly over his breast pocket, bold NASA letters catching the light. The room went still. No one laughed. No one whispered. Even Mr. Rickerman froze, lips parted slightly. "Good afternoon," Ellis said, voice smooth but steady. "I'm Dr. Sanders. I designed space communication systems for NASA." A beat of silence. Then hands shot up. "Do you build rockets?" "No," Ellis smiled, "but I help them call home after they leave Earth." "How?" another kid blurted. He tapped the projector remote. A slide appeared on the screen, satellites orbiting Mars. When data leaves a rover on Mars, it bounces to one of these relay satellites, which then transmit it across millions of miles back to Earth. "Like FaceTime," a kid guessed. Ellis chuckled. "Kind of, just with a 15-minute delay and no filters." The class laughed, and for the first time all day, so did Micah. He was glowing now, shoulders back, eyes wide, everything in him awake again. And just before wrapping up, Ellis paused, let the silence settle. "By the way," he said, voice measured, "I heard earlier that a job like mine might sound unrealistic." He turned slightly, his gaze passing over the teacher but not landing there. "Maybe," he continued, "some people just need a better definition of what's possible." And he smiled. For a long second after Dr. Sanders finished speaking, the room didn't move. No one clapped. No one giggled. Even the projector's low hum seemed louder in the silence. It wasn't awkward. It was something else. A recognition. Like the room had just seen something it hadn't expected and didn't quite know how to process. Mr. Rickerman stood near the doorway, still holding his clipboard like it had just become too heavy. His eyes flicked from Dr. Sanders to the screen, then slowly to Micah. Micah didn't look back. He was sitting straighter now. His hands were no longer knotted together in his lap. His shoulders, which had spent the better part of the day curled inward, were relaxed. He wasn't grinning. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He didn't have to. Around him, classmates were watching with new eyes, not the eyes that snickered that morning, not the ones that doubted. Something had changed in the room's gravity. Like someone had walked in and shifted the center of it, Talia Monroe leaned in, voice low but triumphant. "I told you so." Micah glanced sideways just enough to meet her eyes, and nodded. Not a smug nod, not a "see, I was right" nod, just the kind that says thank you. The kind that says you were the only one who believed me when it mattered. Dr. Sanders gave a final polite nod and walked calmly back toward the door, his presence trailing a silence that didn't need filling. And as he disappeared down the hall, that silence didn't break, it just settled around Micah, over the room, into the places where doubt had once lived. And from that moment on, everything and everyone felt just a little bit different. Dinner that night was cereal. Not because there wasn't real food, there was a container of stew in the fridge, and a pot of rice still warm on the stove, but cereal felt easier, simpler, like something small and soft to land on after a long, complicated day. Micah sat at the kitchen table, knees tucked to his chest, the sleeve of his pajama shirt drooping slightly over his hand as he stirred the milk around his Cheerios. Across the room, Ellis stood by the counter with his usual evening mug, the one that read Space Nerd in faded blue cradled loosely between both hands. The silence between them was gentle, not awkward, not stiff, just quiet, like both of them knew something big had happened and neither wanted to rush into naming it. Micah's spoon clinked softly against the bowl. Then, after a long pause, why did they laugh? He didn't raise his voice, didn't look up, just asked. Ellis didn't answer right away. He set the mug down, walked over, and pulled out the chair beside his son. He let out a quiet breath like he was trying to choose the right size words. "Because," he said, "some people live inside small boxes. They only believe what they've seen. And when someone, especially someone who looks like you, says something that doesn't fit in that box, they laugh." Micah's brow furrowed. "I felt dumb today." Ellis looked at him, really looked. Then leaned in, elbows on the table, eyes steady and calm. "Don't ever let their doubt erase your truth." Micah met his gaze. "You know who you are," Ellis said. "You know who I am, that's what matters." Micah didn't nod right away. He sat with the words for a second, rolling them over like marbles in his mind. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. It wasn't the kind of nod that ends a conversation. It was the kind that seals something. Ellis smiled and reached out, ruffling his son's hair with a soft tug. "You did good today." Micah gave a small smile. The kind you don't show on purpose, the kind that escapes when your guard slips. The cereal was soggy now. Neither of them cared. And in that kitchen light, surrounded by quiet, they both understood something unspoken. That the world may try to question your truth, but it can't take it from you, as long as you choose to speak it out loud. The next morning, the classroom felt lighter, not louder, not busier, just different, like something had shifted in the walls overnight, something you couldn't see but could definitely feel. Micah walked in quietly, backpack slung over one shoulder, his shoes squeaking slightly against the linoleum. He took his seat like he always did, second row from the front, by the window, and began unpacking his pencil case without looking up. But he didn't have to look up to notice. Eyes were on him. Not like before, not with doubt or disbelief. Today they watched with curiosity, with interest, with a kind of quiet respect that hadn't existed the day before. "Micah," a boy called across the room before the bell rang, "has your dad ever met an astronaut?" Micah looked up, surprised by the question. "Yeah," he said after a second. "He's met a few. Most of the ones he works with aren't flying anymore, though. They help with engineering stuff now." "Whoa," the kid said, eyes wide. Another student raised her hand. "Can he bring something in next time, like from NASA?" Micah shrugged. "Most of it's locked down, but maybe." He didn't puff up, didn't grin, just answered. He didn't need to prove anything now. At recess, Talia walked beside him as they crossed the blacktop. She didn't say much at first, just bumped her shoulder into his, then said with a grin, "They believe you now." Micah didn't answer right away. He looked at the pavement ahead. "They didn't have to," he said finally, but his voice had softened, and there was a smile, not big but real. After lunch, Micah returned to his cubby and found a folded sheet of lined paper sitting on top of his spelling book. The handwriting was familiar, tight, tidy, slanted slightly to the right. "Micah, I was wrong. You never had to prove anything to us. Keep dreaming big." "Mr. Riekerman." Micah stared at it for a moment. He didn't smile, didn't show anyone. Just folded it neatly in half, placed it in the front pocket of his backpack and zipped it up. Not because it wasn't meaningful, but because he didn't need it to mean more than it already did. The real moment had already happened, not in ink but in silence. And Micah had already moved forward.